I have a number of loves in my life, and one of them is Vanguard. And I'm grateful for the chance that I get to be here on campus each week to teach. Got a class this semester of Theo 101 students. Are you in the house? Everyone else gets to fail. So if they didn't show up today, I'll talk to them at 12 when we have class. I got a chance to speak at the beginning of the semester, actually the very first chapel of this semester, and it's fun to see who still shows up at chapel. 3 weeks left until chapel's over. You win. So I love Vanguard because of what it did for my life. This piece of property at 55 Fair Drive is so pivotal to my story, and it changed me forever for those 4 years from 1998 until 2002. And I love this place, and I'm actually, when I show up on campus still, I'm like, it's my place, it's not yours, it's mine. But I also am very aware that it is your place, and the fact that you are a student body that are continuing to strive after what God is doing in your life. You are writing songs like that. It's amazing. I'm so excited about the worship project that's under works, and the CD that's about to hit iTunes and stores and all kinds of good stuff. So I'm very excited for what's happening here at Vanguard still. I have a love of orange. I love it because it's probably the most famous color that is also a flavor. Put that together real quick. There's not many others. Maybe like plum? That's not famous though. Orange. I love orange. In fact, the hashtag I've been working with my team in this plant that we're doing, this church plant that we're doing in the city of Oranges, is actually hashtag I Heart Orange. And our goal as a new church in that city is to express this sense of love for the community. We don't want to just be a new church in that city. We want to be a church for that city. And so I love orange. And my friend Sean and I, who's with me today, we went to a place and picked up 750 pounds of oranges to hand out. And a steal of a price for only 150 bucks. I mean, you amateurize that bad boy out, you're beating grocery stores left and right. So we bought this huge bin of oranges and we started handing oranges out. Is there anybody else who loves oranges in the house? Oranges. Let's go right now. Yes, let's just see what happens. In all my time, there we go. Oh, that was perfect. Oh, just kidding. I forever want this day to be known as the day that the chapel speaker just tossed oranges. All right, right there. Well done, well done. I'll leave a few to be desired. Here we go, and oh, stolen, the last moment. Well done. So I love Vanguard, I love orange, I heart orange. It's a new, like I said, a new church that we're planting. If you don't have a church, we'd love to have you jump in on the journey that we're doing in that city. It's a shameless plug, I know. But if you really want to be a Christian, you'll come to I'm just kidding. A third love I have is really obscure Bible passages. And so if you have a Bible this morning, which I know is a random thing to ask for at a Christian college, or if you have a phone, how about you turn to Matthew chapter 1. I have a fourth love in my life, and that is my family. And I know some of you are thinking, where's your love of God? It's always there. Just relax. My fourth love is my family, and I really do love what's going on in the life of them. I have a 9-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 4-year-old, and the 4-year-old spent probably 2 a.m. until this morning in my bed. That's what she does. She just sneaks in. I want to kick her out. She's so cute. But I love what's happening in their life. I love their inquisitive nature about things that are happening. And one of the things for them, and especially for the youngest, is always looking at pictures. Oh, don't put up Matthew 1 just yet. I want to hold it. The pictures in our life, and we look at Facebook. I'm always snapping pictures, and they get to see themselves, and they see the picture of Instagram that I've posted about them. But they really love pictures about life before them. And one of those albums that we look at often is our wedding album. And we have this at our house, and my kids get to flip through it from time to time, and they see people that they know, namely me and my wife, And they're like, ooh, tell us the story again about that day that Daddy got to wear a suit and Mommy got to wear that white dress. And they look through what's happening here in the albums, and they see people, and they're like, ooh, Grandpa's in the picture, and Grandma's in the picture, and look, it's Auntie and Uncle, and all that. And then they invariably go to that question of, well, where am I? Am I in Mommy's tummy? No, that happened way later. And we're not going to talk about how that happened. We keep flipping pictures, and they look, and they keep looking at pictures of, they see all these famous people, and then we get to that one picture. And when we get to this picture, they will ask a question that's really hard to hear, and they say, who is that? And I know the picture that they're looking at. I don't even have to look at the album. And that's when the music stops and it's silent, because my wife and I look at each other and we don't exactly know how to answer that question. Because the person that they're looking at is no longer a part of our family. And because of an affair and a divorce, that person will never be in a family picture again. And so I look at this picture and I'm trying to figure out, what do I tell them in their 4, 6, and 9-year-old minds that will make sense? And I struggle through an answer. Maybe it's an answer that's safe at the moment for them to understand. But you look at these albums like this and you think, what do I do with the people in my life that it's hard to tell stories about because they're not there anymore? Or because of some ugliness that happened because life is ugly at times? What do I tell my kids? And I know that we're not alone as a family on this one. I know for a fact in a room like this, many of you have those kinds of albums. You probably even have moments on your Facebook timeline feed that you have gone back in history and erased photos because you no longer are connected to that person. Can I get a shout out? Exactly. Facebook did a study recently where there's this feature on Facebook that you can report a picture if it's not appropriate. Well, they were also finding that one of the number one reasons people would flag a picture as not appropriate is because they no longer liked the picture or that person. It wasn't that it was really causing any issue like nudity or hate speech. It was just that they didn't like that person anymore. And Facebook's like, well, what do we do with this? You just have tension. And so I know that we're not alone in this. We're not a family that is just by ourselves, and the fact that we have people in our lives that we don't know how to tell their story. And this brings me to this obscure passage in Matthew chapter 1, because I love what Matthew does. And Matthew is one of the writers of the Gospels. There's 4, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. I know you're impressed with my knowledge. Mark and John begin the story with John the Baptist and his ushering in of the story of Jesus. Luke tells those classic Christmas stories. And Matthew, while he will eventually get to some of those Christmas stories that we know so well, he begins with a genealogy. And all he does in a genealogy is just list people after people after people. And a genealogy is about as boring as it can get. So let us read this genealogy together in Matthew chapter 1. I figured let's have some fun here in chapel. This is the genealogy of Jesus the Messiah, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Abraham was the father of Isaac, Isaac the father of Jacob, Jacob the father of Judah and his brothers, Judah the father of Perez and Zerah, whose mother was Tamar, Perez the father of Hezron, Hezron the father of Ram, Ram the father of Amminadab, Amminadab the father of Nahshon, Nahshon the father of Salmon, Salmon the father of Boaz, whose mother was Rahab, Boaz the father of Obed, whose mother was Ruth, Obed the father of Jesse, and Jesse the father of King David. David was the father of Solomon, whose mother had been Uriah's wife. What I'm fascinated by in Matthew's approach to life is that he starts with a genealogy. It's not how I would have started the story about Jesus, but he knows his readers a lot better than I do. And he knows that for a good Jewish audience in who he is writing to, he has to establish some credibility for this guy, Jesus. And every Jewish person at that time would have asked 2 questions. If you're going to tell me a story about the Messiah, a son of God, you have to tell me, is he related to Abraham and is he related to David? And we see very clearly in genealogy, in this one, in verse 1 and then verse 6, he answers both those questions. He draws the connection to Abraham, the father of many nations. Okay? And then verse 6, he does the same thing by drawing the connection to David, because every Jew knew that the Messiah would come from David's line. But he does something that's really impressive. Actually, I wouldn't have done it if I were him. He includes people in this genealogy that are really, really sketchy, shady, bad. He includes 4 women in this list. And 3 of them aren't even Jewish people. I mean, you talk about Rahab. I mean, she was a prostitute, right? You talk about Ruth, and she was a Moabite. And I know when I say Moabite, many of you are saying, yes, the book of Amos. Yeah. He mentions Uriah's wife there at the bottom of verse 6, and we all know that story. You remember when she was bathing naked and David was watching, and then something happened? But the one I want to zero in on today is in verses 2 and 3, and this is the most fascinating to me. So if we look closer, Abraham was the father of Isaac, and Isaac the father of Jacob, Jacob the father of Judah and his brothers, Judah the father of Perez and Zerah, whose mother was Tamar. Tamar. Why would he put Tamar in this list? Why couldn't he leave well enough alone and pushed her aside? Because Tamar brings no glory to the story. Because if you remember the story of Tamar, she's connected to Judah. And if you remember Judah, well, we first meet him in Genesis chapter 37, and not because of him, but because of his more famous younger brother, a guy named Joseph, who had an amazing coat of colors. Do you remember the story? Is it all coming back to you right now? You remember how Joseph, the favored son of Jacob, gets that special coat, and all the brothers hated him because of it. And one day, while the brothers are off tending the flocks in far-off fields because they needed grass to graze the cattle, he sends Joseph. Hey, Joseph, why don't you go check on your brothers? And so Joseph, like a good brother who's young and wants to prove that he's cool, he puts on that coat and walks out to the fields where his brothers are, and they see him coming, and they know it's him because he's got that coat. And when he comes closer, they devise a plan. Let us get rid of Joseph because it is obvious that our father loves him best. And they take him, they strip him of that coat, they throw him in a cistern, which is basically like a well, and they cover it up with some branches, and he's in the bottom, probably shouting off, and they have lunch. It literally says this, they're eating lunch. And while they're eating lunch, a group of Midianites come by, and this is where we are introduced to Judah specifically. Because Reuben, the oldest brother, was kind of unsure of what to do. He wasn't sure they should kill their younger brother, Joseph. Well, Judah comes up with a different plan, and he says, hey, how about we sell him? Because we'll get rid of him. He won't be our problem anymore. He can't wear that coat anymore. And we'll have some money. So the Midianite traders come by, and they sell Joseph off to them. They take them into a far-off region. They are all happy as brothers, and they dip his special magic coat of colors into some blood of a goat, and they go back to their father Jacob, and they show him the coat. And instantly Jacob's heart sinks because his son Joseph, the one he loved a lot, is presumed dead. And all he knows is he's dead because he sees in the story that they tell is a wild animal attacked and Joseph was dead. Judah somehow convinced his brothers not to tell the truth. I don't know what the stories were like in the back rooms of the house that day or in the many days that followed. Shh, don't tell Dad. Don't ever tell Dad what happened. Because they knew if they told Dad, they'd be found out. So time goes on, as it so often does in our lives, and Judah gets to a point where he wants to leave town, and he leaves town, and he gets married, and he has 3 kids, Onan, and Shelah. I know, I'm giving you new names for your future kids. It's so great. He has these 3 kids, and they grow up, and they become of age to get married, or at least does, the oldest. And so Judah finds Tamar. This is how she comes into the story. Tamar marries and we're not told a lot of details in the Bible, but displeases God so much so that God kills him. And so Tamar is left as a widow, and in that day, the widow's brother, or the brother of the one who died, was the one who was supposed to marry the widow and bring honor to her. And so Onan was told, you got to marry Tamar. And Onan agreed, but he didn't. And he did some shady stuff himself, so much so that it displeased God, and he died. So Tamar is married and dies. Tamar is widowed, now married Onan, and Onan does some shady stuff. He dies, and she is widowed again. And finally, that last son is her only hope of bringing redemption to her name, and his name is Shelah, but he's not old enough yet. And so Judah says, hey, Tamar, why don't you go home to your homeland, go spend some time with your father and your father's household, and when Shelah is old enough, you can marry him. But Judah is thinking to himself, there's not a chance in hell I'm going to let her marry him, because obviously the two other brothers died because of her. That's not really the story, but that's what he tells himself. And when Shelah becomes of age, he keeps him hidden from Tamar. And Tamar, even though she's at her father's house, gets word that Shelah is old enough and that Judah is not letting him marry her. So she takes matters into her own hands. And she knows that one day her father-in-law will be coming down a certain road. She gets word of it somehow. And so she takes off the widow's clothes, which are probably sackcloth and ashes or black or something, or whatever it would have been. Removes those clothes, dresses the part, and what the King James says, dresses the part of a harlot, and goes on the town road and makes herself available for any passerby, but she knows that her father-in-law is the one who will pass by. And when he comes down the road, he sees this girl, and he's so intrigued that he makes an offer. And they agree to an offer, and apparently the selling price that day was a goat. I mean, a goat. Why not? Get a goat out of it at least. I was supposed to be funny. I don't know where that went. So they agree on the price of a goat, but he doesn't have a goat on him. I mean, come on, how many times have I heard that? I don't have a goat. And he says, tomorrow I'll bring you a goat, but she wants collateral. She will not just take his word, and so she says, can I have your staff? Can I have your ring or your sign, or your symbol, and your cord, which is probably what held the ring, and this is what he would have signed every contract. This is what would have bound him to everything in his life. This is a sign of power. And so he would have obviously had to taken those off for what he was about to do, hands her all this stuff. They do the deed. Do I need to fill in the blanks here? We good? Okay, cool. They do the deed, deed's done, Judah goes on his way, Tamar goes home. The next day, Judah, a man of his word, sends the goat with his servant, which is a weird conversation. Hey, can you take this goat? Well, to who? There's a girl on the side of the road. So he takes the goat. There's no girl on the side of the road anymore because she's gone home, and she goes to her father's house. And so Judah says, oh, well, I've lost my signet ring, I've lost the cord, and I've lost my staff, whatever. At least I don't have to lose my shame. 3 months go by, and Tamar is pregnant, and Judah hears of it. And he's told, your daughter-in-law, the one who married and the one who married Onan, she's pregnant. And Judah flies off the handle. He actually orders his household to start the biggest fire possible because he's going to burn her alive. And right as they're about to lead her out to the fire, she sends a note. I am pregnant by the man who owns these, and gives the staff, the ring, and the cord back. And Judah sinks because he knows he's been found out. He knows that he is in the wrong, and he has treated his daughter-in-law with no respect and no honor. And I'm amazed by this story, and I'm amazed that Matthew chooses to tell it. I'm amazed that it makes its way into the genealogy. And as if we continue the story here, Judah, the father of Perez and Zerah, whose mother was Tamar, that was his daughter-in-law, right? And so Perez was the father of Hezron, and Hezron the father of Ram. And if we continue down the line, we get to Jesus. For whatever reason, Matthew wants to point out that these people make it in. And I'm intrigued. Matthew, why would you do this? Why would you include these people? Because Matthew knows full well that Jesus is in the business and God is in the business of redeeming people's stories. Matthew, if you know, is a tax collector. And I wanted to tell his story today because tomorrow's tax day, April 15th, right? He's the tax collector of all tax collectors, and he knew that the day that Jesus walked into town, his life was forever changed because Jesus chose to eat with him. It's told in Matthew chapter 9. We won't turn there because of time, and you got to get to class and all this good stuff. But Matthew's life is forever changed because he comes in contact with Jesus. And Matthew is fully convinced he needs to tell a story and a gospel of good news about this Jesus, because the way that Jesus is redeeming and reconciling and reclaiming the world is what God has been up to all along since everything goes bad in Genesis chapter 3. He's in the business of reclaiming people's lives. He's in the business of letting people know that no matter what your story is, no matter what blemish is, no matter what your family history is, and the albums that you have and the unsightly branches on your family tree, God can still use you. Because he uses, apparently, a guy like Judah, who in my book is a rat. I would not talk to that guy. He would not get a Christmas card. And Tamar, you got to love a girl like her, but you don't love all the things that she does, but you love that a God can use her. And he uses her offspring to continue the line that goes through David that eventually gets to Jesus. And Matthew is brilliant because we're telling a genealogy, which again is the most boring thing that you can imagine, but it's the most life-giving thing that we can read on a day like today, on April 14th, 2015, because we're on a campus of Vanguard filled with students who have stories. I've heard this thing, like, your story matters. And your story really does. But some of you are unsure if your story really does matter to God because you notice the blemishes and the marks and the bad places and the ways that you have messed it up, or things have been done to you where you think your life is no longer good to God. And I'm here to proclaim to you that just as Matthew does in his genealogy, your life matters, your story matters, and he can still use you to advance and to expand the kingdom. And that is good news on a day like today. You need to be reminded of this, that the Tamars and the Judahs, no matter how unsightly they are, they get in. And so do you, and so do I. That's the amazing God that we serve. That's the God that we have sung about today. That's the God who is simply awesome. Can I pray for you this morning?
At Vanguard University, your story matters. Where will it take you next? For more information, please visit vanguard.edu.